Hey guys, it's Hayden here making another video. Today I'm going to share the most powerful tool that I have used to help myself, to help other clients in recovery, as well as my current development. Let's get into it. Welcome to another video, guys. Today, like I said, I'll be talking about one of the tools that I use to help in my recovery from psychosis, as well as my current development. And this is something that I use with my clients as well. If this is something that sounds interesting and you'd like to see more videos about psychosis recovery and mental health and spirituality, then consider subscribing and liking the video. So the reason I decided to make this video is because it's something that's highly requested. I get a lot of people that ask me, what do I do from here? I've had psychosis. I've kind of come out of the delusion aspect, but now I feel lost. I feel confused. I don't really know what to go. What direction do I go in? There's a lot of kind of discombobulation and a feeling of lostness that can happen after psychosis. It's a stressful experience, so there's a lot of things that can be triggered, and it's going to be a little bit different for each person. But this tool that I use can really apply to anybody and kind of can meet you where you are in your development. So there's three main steps to this process or this technique or this tool that I use to help people and myself in this process. The first step is going to be identifying what your main concerns are, what your main kind of problems are, and writing those down. It's really important to write these down. And the second step is going to be identifying those or sorting those into two categories, one being acceptance, the other being goals. And then third is following through and revisiting this practice over time. So let's go a little bit more in depth with each of these different steps. So the first step is probably one of the most important steps. Well, it's the first step to sort of achieving or moving through anything at all, which is going to be identifying what your main concerns are. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, one of the most important things with this is being able to write these down. So literally go through your mind. You know, if you're watching this video, there's probably things on your mind that you're struggling with. You don't necessarily have to have gone through psychosis or have to have anything like super traumatic in your life to do this process. It can be helpful for anything. So just write down whatever is on your mind, whatever might be bothering you, whatever you might be trying to work on, and write it down. Get it on paper. Because when it's in your mind and it's kind of bouncing around, it's hard to identify it. It's hard to work with it because it's kind of abstract, and our mind has a way of bending around situations or curving it and not necessarily being able to work with it practically. So that's a very important step of the process. So the first step is identifying and writing down the main concerns of what's going on in your life. Second step is going to be sorting those things that we wrote down into categories of acceptance and categories of goals for growth over time. So with this process or this step, it's a little more complicated than the second step, but we'll break it down a little bit to make it more simple. So each concern that is brought up, usually in this tool, in this process, there's a part of each of the things that we write down that we need to learn how to accept in the moment. So I'll give you an example for this. So say I feel like I'm not accomplished. I don't feel like I'm in a career. I haven't moved forward in my career, and so I feel like I'm lacking in that way. So that's an example of something that might be going on in my life. So an example for a focus on acceptance would be accepting where I am in the moment, accepting that like right here, right now, it's okay to be where I am, and it's okay to like not necessarily have the career that I want. It's okay. I still deserve love in where I am right now. It doesn't mean that I'm not worthy of love. It doesn't mean that I'm not a deserving person because I don't have those things. And learning how to accept myself in the moment, despite not having the career that I'd like to in the future or like the career that I want right now. So there's an aspect of acceptance. And then there's also an aspect of a goal or something we can work towards. So if there's something I want to work towards in a career, then breaking it down into a manageable and reasonable step towards that goal. So for example, if there's a career that I'd like to go into, what's the next reasonable or manageable step I can take to help me get to that place? So if I'm really struggling and I'm in a depression and I might be unemployed at the time and I'm feeling a lot of guilt about that or something like that, maybe the next step I could take would be to maybe get a part-time job, maybe just like have a part-time job, or if that's too much, maybe finding a place where you can volunteer once a week. So finding a place where you can maybe start to work towards your goals, and maybe working is too much for you at this moment. And these are kind of more extreme examples, but there's going to be some people that watch this that are going to be in these kind of situations. So you kind of have to figure out, like, how am I going to move towards that goal in a way that like allows me to express that desire to move towards that, while also maintaining that mental health, while maintaining that stress level that is more manageable, and also learning how to accept ourselves in the moment, knowing that like right now this is where I'm at and that's okay, and we can still move forward and make progress towards the goals that we want to achieve. So I kind of like broke that down. That's like one example of breaking down one concern into aspects of accepting yourself, and then aspects of moving towards your goal. Because ultimately, like, just because you're not where you want to be right now doesn't mean that you're not deserving, doesn't mean that you're not worthy, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person or you should feel ashamed of yourself, things like that. So it's important to kind of challenge those beliefs. And this process can be a little bit difficult because sometimes we have perceptions about ourselves that we aren't worthy, that we don't deserve certain things, or we feel ashamed or guilty. And that's understandable. Like some of the people that have had some experiences that were very disempowering, like psychosis or some other traumas, it's easy to get in a place where we feel like nothing's going to get better, everything's going to be difficult, and stuff like that. But know that like just because you've had those experiences and just because like you're struggling right now doesn't mean that you're always going to be in that place. It doesn't mean that like you can't learn how to accept where you are right now and start to build that sense of self-love, build that sense of understanding that like we live in a culture that's so focused on achievements, and we are worth being valued by your productivity or by what you can provide to other people, which is not necessarily an accurate way of indicating self-value. In my opinion, everybody deserves, regardless of how much they provide to society. You don't have to necessarily like do anything to deserve love, and that's kind of something that has taken me a while to kind of understand and break through myself. And so it can be difficult to kind of go through this process, and that's why it's helpful to have a therapist or have a coach to work through that with you. And if you feel like you need help to kind of like sort these categories, I'm happy to do a session with you. But you can also do it by yourself. And so basically, to kind of sum it up for this second step, basically focus on like what you can accept about yourself in the moment right now for one problem, and then set goals for yourself for like, this is like where I'd like to go. Like I accept myself like where I am right now and understand that this is the reality of the situation and that's okay. And I need to take steps towards these goals. And how can I do that in a way that is sustainable, that is achievable, and will help me to get towards what I want in the future. The third step is revisiting this skill. So going back and applying it. So a skill or a tool is only useful if you use it. So if you do step 1, identify, step 2, sort into acceptance and goals, if we don't revisit the acceptance, if we don't revisit the goals and fine tune it and tweak it, then it's not gonna be something that helps us over time. So Acceptance is something that is practiced, that is learned. And so just because we make a chart or we sort out everything that we are focusing on accepting and then focusing on working towards, doesn't mean that instantly everything's going to change. So we really have to develop a practice of when we start to notice ourselves going down the rabbit holes that we do, we have to be able to catch ourselves and be like, what can I do about this right now? Is there something that I can do about this right now? And if you can't change anything in the moment, then learning how to accept that moment, learning how to accept where you are in that place. And then maybe setting a goal for tomorrow, I can do something, or later today, I can do something to help me work towards that goal. So kind of investigating that thought process and using that tool and those acceptance skills and those goal setting skills to kind of be a guiding post, so we don't go off the rails when something stressful happens, when something difficult happens, or when our mind just starts to wander and starts to like take us to places that are not necessarily healthy. So it's kind of like a guiding post that you create for yourself. And another thing to think about while you're making this is to also like view your problems when you're making the acceptance and the goals. View those problems as if you were like helping your friend, but it's for you, but obviously you're changing your mindset, so it's not about yourself. It's like you were talking to someone else. Like, oh, like if my friend came to me and said this, how would I help them? What would I say to them? Like, what would I say they need to accept? What would I say you could set for goals to help you move forward? Because sometimes we can be hypercritical and we kind of get stuck when we think of it as it's a thing for us. But if we view it as a situation for somebody else, sometimes we have a lot more compassion. Sometimes we're more realistic with our goals, and sometimes we're more able to like get out of some of the baggage and the traps that we have in our own minds. And so that can be a great tool to use as well when doing this process. And again, if you guys have any questions about this process, feel free to message me on Instagram or my email, or put the comments below. I'm happy to support in the way you need, because I know it's a simple process, but it can bring up a lot of issues, and it can be hard. So definitely reach out if you need some support, and we can set up a session or something. But that's basically the tool. That's basically the structure that I use for most people who come to me. That's pretty much the first thing we work on, because from there, focusing on acceptance and focusing on the goals, that's where the work starts to happen. So learning how to accept, that's self-love, that's self-care. And then learning how to set goals and achieve those goals, that's long-term success. That's kind of like helping you feel like you're empowered in your life and you can do things. So that's like the most grounded and practical way I've found to help people make progress and to help myself make progress. And things will come up and the healing and the process will unfold while we do that work. And when things come up, that's when we can start to be like, okay, well, why do you have a hard time accepting this situation? Why do you have a hard time setting goals and following through? And that's when the real work starts, and that's when kind of like the growth and development starts to happen. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope this video is helpful for you. Like I said in the video, if you do need extra support or coaching, reach out to me on my Instagram or my email, and we can set up a session. And as always, guys, make sure to seek your truth and to take time for yourself. And I'll catch you in future videos. Bye for now.